Welcome, and let your mind drift gently through the steam rising from countless cups across millennia, as we embark on a peaceful journey through the remarkable story of tea. This simple leaf, transformed by water and time, has shaped civilizations, sparked revolutions, and brought moments of quiet contemplation to billions of souls throughout history. Tonight, we shall wander through mist-shrouded mountains where ancient trees first offered their leaves to curious hands, traverse the Silk Roads where merchants carried precious bundles of dried leaves across continents, and settle into the quiet corners of homes where the ritual of tea brings peace to daily life. Let us begin our journey in the verdant hills of ancient China, where legend and history intertwine like the delicate tendrils of steam rising from the first cup of tea. According to Chinese mythology, the discovery of tea dates back to 2737 BCE, when the Emperor Shen Nong sat beneath a wild tea tree, boiling water for drinking. As fate would have it, a gentle breeze stirred the branches above, and several leaves drifted down into his pot. The emperor, known for his interest in herbs and medicine, decided to taste this accidental infusion. He found it refreshing and invigorating, and thus, as the story tells us, tea was born into human culture. While this tale belongs to the realm of legend, archaeological evidence suggests that tea consumption in China began at least 3,000 years ago during the Shang dynasty. In the southwestern regions of China, particularly in what is now Yunnan province, ancient peoples discovered that the leaves of certain wild trees, when prepared properly, created a beverage that was both pleasant and beneficial. These early tea drinkers likely chewed fresh leaves initially, much as some ethnic groups in the region still do today, before developing methods of drying and steeping them. The botanical origins of tea trace back to the Camellia sinensis plant, which grew wild in the forests of the eastern Himalayas, spanning areas that now include northeastern India, northern Myanmar, and southwestern China. This remarkable plant, with its glossy evergreen leaves and delicate white flowers, would eventually give rise to every true tea in the world, from the lightest white tea to the darkest pu'er. The genetic diversity found in these ancient forests suggests that tea plants have been evolving here for millions of years, long before humans discovered their potential. As we move forward through the mists of time, we find that during the Zhou dynasty, which lasted from 1046 to 256 BC, tea had begun to take on religious and ceremonial significance. It was offered in religious rituals and used in ancestral worship. The preparation and consumption of tea became associated with spiritual practice, a connection that would deepen and evolve throughout Chinese history. Buddhist monks, in particular, found that tea helped them maintain alertness during long periods of meditation, and monasteries became centers of tea cultivation and culture. The Han Dynasty, spanning from 206 BCE to 220 CE, marked a crucial period in tea's evolution from a regional specialty to a beverage enjoyed across the Chinese Empire. During this time, tea processing methods became more sophisticated. Leaves were steamed, pounded into cakes, and dried for storage and transport. These tea cakes could be carried along trade routes without spoiling, allowing tea to spread far beyond its mountainous birthplaces. Archaeological discoveries from Han Dynasty tombs have revealed tea containers and residues, confirming that tea had become valuable enough to accompany the deceased into the afterlife. Let us pause here to consider the profound transformation that occurs when fresh tea leaves become the beverage we know. The processing of tea is an art that developed over centuries, with each step carefully refined to bring out different qualities in the final brew. Fresh leaves contain numerous chemical compounds, including polyphenol, amino acids, and caffeine, which interact in complex ways during processing. When leaves are plucked, they begin to oxidize, a process that tea makers learn to control through various techniques of withering, rolling, oxidation, and drying. These processes, developed through generations of experimentation and passed down through families and communities, would eventually give rise to the 6 main categories of tea we know today: white, green, yellow, oolong, black, and dark tea. During the Tang dynasty, from 618 to 907 CE, tea culture flowered into its first golden age. This was when Lu Yu, often called the Saint of Tea, wrote the Cha Jing, or Classic of Tea, around 760 CE. This remarkable work, the first comprehensive treatise on tea in the world, covered everything from tea cultivation and processing to the proper way to prepare and serve it. Lu Yu elevated tea drinking from a simple act of consumption to an art form, describing the ideal water sources, the proper temperature for brewing, and even the spiritual dimensions of tea preparation. His work established principles that continue to influence tea culture today. The Tang dynasty also saw tea become deeply embedded in Chinese daily life across all social classes. Tea houses began to appear in cities, serving as social centers where people gathered to drink tea, conduct business, share news, and enjoy entertainment. These establishments ranged from simple stalls serving workers to elaborate pavilions where scholars and officials discussed poetry and politics over rare teas. The government recognized tea's economic importance and established the first tea tax in 780 CE, acknowledging tea as a necessity of life alongside salt and iron. It was also during the Tang period that tea first traveled beyond China's borders in significant quantities. Along the Silk Road, caravans carried tea bricks westward, introducing Central Asian peoples to this remarkable beverage. To the east, Japanese Buddhist monks studying in Chinese monasteries discovered tea and began carrying seeds and knowledge back to Japan, planting the seeds of what would become a distinctive Japanese tea culture. To the south, tea traveled into Tibet, where it became so essential that it was mixed with yak butter and salt to create a nourishing beverage suited to the harsh mountain environment. Now, let us gently shift our attention to the Song dynasty, lasting from 960 to 1279 CE, often considered the pinnacle of Chinese tea culture. During this period, tea preparation evolved into increasingly refined forms. The whisk tea ceremony, where powdered tea was beaten with hot water using a bamboo whisk, became the height of sophistication. This method required great skill and produced a frothy, jade-green beverage that was as beautiful to behold as it was delightful to drink. Tea competitions became popular among the literati, with participants judged on their skill in whisking tea to achieve the perfect foam and color. The Song dynasty also witnessed remarkable innovations in tea cultivation and processing. Tea gardens were carefully managed, with farmers discovering that the finest teas came from specific terroirs, where soil, climate, and altitude combined to produce leaves with exceptional flavor. The concept of tribute tea, special teas reserved for the imperial court, drove innovation as tea producers competed to create ever more exquisite varieties. Some of these tribute teas required tens of thousands of carefully selected buds to produce a single kilogram of finished tea, and their preparation involved numerous intricate steps, each performed with ceremonial precision. During this time, tea also became deeply intertwined with Chinese philosophy and aesthetics. The Neo-Confucian scholars of the Song dynasty saw in tea a reflection of cosmic principles, finding in its preparation and consumption a path to understanding the natural order. Artists and poets celebrated tea in their works, creating a rich cultural legacy that linked tea with refinement, contemplation, and the appreciation of beauty and simplicity. The famous poet Su Dongpo wrote extensively about tea, comparing fine tea to beautiful women and describing the transcendent experience of drinking exceptional tea in moments of natural beauty. As we continue our peaceful exploration, we find ourselves in the Yuan dynasty, from 1271 to 1368, when Mongol rulers brought their own influences to Chinese tea culture. While the Mongols initially preferred fermented mare's milk to tea, they soon recognized tea's economic and cultural importance. The Yuan period saw the continuation and evolution of earlier tea traditions, though some of the Song dynasty's most elaborate practices simplified. Compressed tea remained popular, particularly for trade, as tea bricks served as currency in many border regions. The Ming dynasty, spanning from 1368 to 1644, brought revolutionary changes to tea culture that would shape how most of the world drinks tea today. The Hongwu Emperor, founder of the Ming dynasty, issued a decree that shifted imperial preference from compressed tea to loose-leaf tea. This seemingly simple change had profound effects. Loose-leaf tea was easier to produce, requiring less labor-intensive processing, which made fine tea more accessible to common people. The steeping of whole leaves in teapots, rather than whisking powdered tea, became the standard method of preparation, a practice that highlighted the natural flavors and aromas of different teas. This period saw the development of many famous tea varieties that remain prized today. In the Wuyi Mountains of Fujian Province, tea masters perfected the art of making oolong tea, partially oxidized teas that captured complexities of flavor impossible to achieve with fully oxidized or unoxidized teas. The delicate white teas of Fujian, made from unopened buds covered in fine silver down, became treasured for their subtle sweetness. Green teas reached new heights of refinement, with varieties like Dragon Well from Hangzhou becoming legendary for their delicate flavor and beautiful appearance. The Ming Dynasty also witnessed the flowering of Yixing teapot culture. In Jiangsu Province, potters discovered that the local purple clay, when fired at high temperatures, created unglazed teapots that enhanced the flavor of tea. These teapots, prized for their ability to retain heat and absorb the essence of the teas brewed in them, became essential tools for the Chinese tea connoisseur. A well-used Yixing pot, seasoned by years of use with a single type of tea, was said to be able to produce a fragrant brew even when filled with plain hot water. Let us now turn our attention to the Qing Dynasty, China's last imperial dynasty, lasting from 1644 to 1912. This period saw both the continuation of classical Chinese tea traditions and increasing interaction with the outside world. The Qing emperors, particularly the Qianlong Emperor, were great patrons of tea culture. The Qianlong Emperor was said to have declared that he could rule without many things, but not without tea for a single day. Imperial tea gardens were established, and the emperor himself would participate in the annual tea-picking ceremony, highlighting tea's importance to Chinese culture and economy. During the Qing period, Chinese tea truly became a global commodity. European traders, particularly the British East India Company, began importing massive quantities of Chinese tea to satisfy growing European demand. The port city of Canton, now Guangzhou, became the center of the tea trade, with special districts established for foreign merchants. The famous tea clippers, sleek sailing ships designed specifically for the tea trade, raced from China to London, competing to deliver the first teas of the season. This trade would have profound consequences, shaping global economics and politics in ways that still resonate today. As we drift now across the waters to Japan, we encounter a tea culture that, while originating from Chinese roots, developed its own profound and distinctive character. The introduction of tea to Japan is traditionally attributed to Buddhist monks who traveled to China during the Tang dynasty. The monk Saicho is credited with bringing tea seeds to Japan in 805 CE, planting them on the slopes of Mount Hai near Kyoto. Another monk, Kukai, also returned from China around the same time with tea seeds and knowledge of tea preparation. Initially, tea in Japan remained primarily within Buddhist monasteries and the imperial court. Monks valued tea for its ability to promote wakefulness during meditation, while aristocrats adopted tea as a sophisticated Chinese cultural practice. During the Heian period, from 794 to 1185, tea drinking was an elegant pastime of the elite, often accompanied by poetry composition and other refined activities. However, as political upheavals led to the decline of connections with China, tea culture in Japan entered a period of dormancy. The revival and transformation of Japanese tea culture began in the late 12th century when the monk Eisai returned from studying in China, bringing with him seeds of a new variety of tea plant and the Song dynasty method of preparing whisked powdered tea. Eisai planted these seeds in various locations and wrote Japan's first tea treatise, Kissa Yajoki, or Drinking Tea for Health, in 1211. He presented tea as a medicine that could cure various ailments and promote longevity, capturing the attention of the shogun Minamoto no Sanetomo, who became an advocate for tea cultivation. The Kamakura period, from 1185 to 1333, saw tea culture spread among the samurai class. Warriors appreciated tea not only for its invigorating properties, but also for the mental clarity and focus it provided. Tea competitions, similar to those of Song dynasty China, became popular among the warrior elite. These events, called tacha, involved participants trying to distinguish between different teas, demonstrating their refinement and connoisseurship. However, these gatherings often became elaborate affairs with gambling and displays of wealth, straying far from the spiritual origins of tea practice. Now we arrive at one of the most profound developments in tea culture, the emergence of the Japanese tea ceremony, or shinoyu. This transformation began in the Muromachi period, particularly through the influence of Zen Buddhism and the aesthetic principle of wabi-sabi, finding beauty in simplicity and imperfection. The tea master Murata Juko, in the late 15th century, began to emphasize the spiritual aspects of tea preparation and consumption, moving away from the ostentation that had characterized earlier tea gatherings. The development of the tea ceremony reached its pinnacle with Sun no Rikyu, who lived from 1522 to 1591. Rikyu, serving as tea master to the powerful warlord Toyotomi Hideyoshi, codified the principles that would define the Japanese tea ceremony for centuries to come. He emphasized four principles: wa, harmony; kei, respect; sei, purity; and jaku, tranquility. Under his influence, the tea ceremony became a total aesthetic experience, encompassing architecture, garden design, flower arrangement, calligraphy, and the careful selection of tea utensils. The tea house, or chishitsu, designed by Rikyu and his followers, embodied these principles in physical form. These structures, often tiny rooms with space for only a few people, were designed to create an atmosphere of rustic simplicity. The entrance, deliberately small and low, required all guests to bow and humble themselves as they entered, symbolically leaving worldly concerns and social status outside. Inside, every element was carefully considered: the scroll hanging in the alcove, the simple flower arrangement, the sound of water boiling in the iron kettle, all working together to create a moment of perfect tranquility. The preparation of matcha, the powdered green tea used in the ceremony, became a meditation in motion. Every gesture, from the cleansing of the utensils to the whisking of the tea, was performed with deliberate grace and mindfulness. The ceremony created a temporary world apart from daily life, where host and guests could experience a moment of perfect harmony. This was not merely about drinking tea, but about creating a space for authentic human connection and spiritual reflection. The influence of the tea ceremony extended far beyond the tea room itself, shaping Japanese aesthetics, philosophy, and social customs. The concept of ichigo ichii, meaning one time, one meeting, emerged from tea culture, reminding participants that each gathering is unique and should be treasured as it will never be repeated exactly. This philosophy encouraged mindfulness and presence, values that permeated Japanese culture. As we continue through Japanese history, we find that alongside the formal tea ceremony, a more accessible tea culture developed among common people. Sencha, a type of steamed green tea, became popular during the Edo period, from 1603 to 1868. Unlike matcha, which required special preparation tools and techniques, sencha could be easily steeped in a teapot, making it practical for everyday consumption. The sencha tea ceremony, less formal than shinoyu, developed its own traditions and aesthetics, emphasizing the appreciation of the tea's natural flavor and the conviviality of shared conversation. The Edo period also saw the emergence of tea as a cornerstone of Japanese daily life. Tea houses and shops proliferated in cities and along highways, serving travelers and townspeople alike. The production of tea expanded throughout Japan, with different regions developing their own specialties. Uji, near Kyoto, became famous for its high-quality matcha and gyakuro, a shade-grown green tea of exceptional sweetness. Shizuoka emerged as Japan's largest tea-producing region, its mild climate and volcanic soil producing teas of remarkable character. Let us now gently turn our attention westward, to trace tea's journey along the ancient trade routes that connected east and west. The Silk Road, that network of paths stretching from China through Central Asia to the Mediterranean, carried not just silk but also tea, spreading this remarkable beverage to new cultures and peoples. Caravans loaded with compressed tea bricks traveled through the Gobi Desert, over the Pamir Mountains, through the great oasis cities of Samarkand and Bokhara, carrying their precious cargo to eager markets. In Central Asia, tea became deeply embedded in the nomadic cultures of the steppes. The Mongols, Kazakhs, and other peoples developed their own distinctive tea traditions, often adding milk, butter, salt, and even flour to create nourishing beverages suited to their harsh environment and mobile lifestyle. Tea became central to hospitality customs, with elaborate rituals developing around the preparation and serving of tea to guests. The samovar, that distinctive metal container for heating water, became a centerpiece of Central Asian and later Russian tea culture, its constant readiness symbolizing the ever-present welcome extended to visitors. The spread of Islam also played a crucial role in tea's journey westward. As alcohol was forbidden by religious law, tea became an important social beverage in Islamic cultures. From the tea houses of Istanbul to the tea gardens of Isfahan, Muslims gathered to drink tea, discuss theology and philosophy, and conduct business. The Ottomans developed their own distinctive tea culture, with small tulip-shaped glasses of strong, sweet tea becoming a symbol of Turkish hospitality. In Iran, the samovar became central to family life, constantly bubbling in the corner of the room, ready to provide tea for family and guests at any moment. Now we must journey to the Indian subcontinent, where tea's story takes a fascinating turn. While tea plants grew wild in the northeastern regions of India, particularly in Assam, these indigenous varieties remained unknown to the wider world for centuries. The British, having developed an insatiable appetite for Chinese tea, were desperate to break China's monopoly on tea production. The East India Company, which controlled much of India by the early 19th century, began searching for ways to cultivate tea within their colonial territories. The discovery of indigenous tea plants in Assam in 1823 by Robert Bruce, a Scottish adventurer, changed everything. These plants, different from the Chinese varieties but clearly related, thrived in the hot, humid climate of northeastern India. The British began establishing vast tea plantations, bringing in Chinese tea makers to teach processing techniques, while also experimenting with mechanization and mass production methods that would revolutionize tea manufacture. The development of Indian tea cultivation was not without its dark chapters. The plantation system relied on indentured labor, with workers often living in harsh conditions. Entire communities were displaced to make room for tea gardens, and traditional agricultural practices were disrupted. Yet despite these troubling origins, tea cultivation would eventually become integral to the Indian economy and culture, with India emerging as one of the world's largest tea producers. The British also introduced tea cultivation to Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, in the 1860s after a plant disease destroyed the island's coffee plantations. The central highlands of Ceylon, with their cool climate and abundant rainfall, proved ideal for tea cultivation. Ceylon tea, known for its bright, brisk flavor, quickly gained a reputation for quality in international markets. The island's tea industry, built on the ruins of coffee estates, would become the backbone of its economy. In India itself, tea gradually transformed from a colonial commodity to a national beverage. The Indian Tea Association, initially created to promote tea consumption among Indians to expand the domestic market, succeeded beyond all expectations. Chai, the spiced milk tea that has become synonymous with Indian tea culture, emerged from the creative adaptation of tea to local tastes and traditions. Each region developed its own variations. The cutting chai of Mumbai, served in small glasses at street stalls; the noon chai of Kashmir, pink with salt and baking soda; the butter tea of Ladakh, borrowed from Tibetan tradition. Let us now sail across the oceans to Europe, where tea's arrival would spark social revolutions and shape empires. Tea first reached Europe in the early 17th century, brought by Dutch and Portuguese traders who had established footholds in Asia. Initially, tea was an exotic curiosity, available only to the wealthy and often consumed for supposed medicinal properties. The Portuguese Princess Catherine of Braganza, who married King Charles II of England in 1662, is often credited with popularizing tea among the English aristocracy, bringing with her a chest of tea as part of her dowry and the Chinese practice of taking tea in the afternoon. In England, tea gradually descended the social ladder from aristocratic luxury to middle-class necessity to working-class staple. The afternoon tea tradition, popularized by Anna, the Duchess of Bedford, in the 1840s, created a new meal and social occasion. The Duchess, finding herself hungry in the long gap between lunch and dinner, began inviting friends to join her for tea and light refreshments in the afternoon. This practice spread throughout society, though taking different forms among different classes. The wealthy enjoyed elaborate tea parties with fine china, delicate sandwiches, and fancy cakes, while working families gathered for high tea, a substantial evening meal accompanied by strong tea. The British relationship with tea became so fundamental that it reshaped global trade and politics. The East India Company's monopoly on tea importation made it one of the most powerful commercial entities in history. The desire for tea drove British imperial expansion in Asia and led to some of history's most consequential events. The Opium Wars, fought between Britain and China in the mid-19th century, were directly related to the tea trade, as Britain sought to balance its massive tea imports with opium exports from India to China, with devastating consequences for Chinese society. The Boston Tea Party of 1773, where American colonists dumped British East India Company tea into Boston Harbor to protest taxation without representation, demonstrates how central tea had become to colonial economics and politics. This event, directly precipitating the American Revolution, shows how a simple beverage had become entangled with questions of power, sovereignty, and human rights. In Britain itself, tea became a marker of civilization and propriety. The ritual of tea time, with its specific etiquette and equipment, became a way of demonstrating refinement and social standing. The tea table became a female domain where women could exercise social influence and power. The temperance movement embraced tea as a wholesome alternative to alcohol, establishing tea rooms where respectable people could socialize without the moral dangers of public houses. The Industrial Revolution transformed tea from a luxury to a necessity for British workers. Factory owners discovered that tea breaks increased productivity, providing workers with caffeine stimulation and a moment of respite from grinding labor. The practice of adding milk and sugar to tea, initially a sign of wealth when these additions were expensive, became standard among all classes. By the end of the 19th century, tea had become so essential to British identity that the government would ensure tea supplies during both world wars, recognizing it as vital to national morale. The British also transformed how tea was produced and traded globally. They introduced mechanization to tea processing, developing rolling machines, drying equipment, and other innovations that could produce consistent quality at a massive scale. The grading system for black tea, with categories like orange pekoe and broken orange pekoe, was developed to standardize quality for international trade. The tea auction system, established in London and later in Colombo and Calcutta, created a global market where tea from different origins could be evaluated and traded efficiently. As we move into the 20th century, we see tea culture continuing to evolve and spread. In Russia, tea became central to social life, with the samovar serving as the heart of the home. Russian tea culture developed its own distinctive characteristics, including the practice of sweetening tea with jam rather than sugar and serving it in glasses held in ornate metal holders called podstakaniki. The Trans-Siberian Railway, completed in 1916, included special cars dedicated to serving tea, acknowledging its importance to Russian travelers. In Morocco and North Africa, tea culture took on its own distinctive character. Green tea, introduced by British merchants in the 18th century, was combined with fresh mint and copious amounts of sugar to create the distinctive Moroccan mint tea. The preparation and serving of this tea became an art form, with tea being poured from great heights to create a foam and served in small glasses in 3 rounds, each with its own symbolic meaning. As the Maghribi proverb states, the first glass is as gentle as life, the second as strong as love, the third as bitter as death. The 20th century also saw the democratization of tea through technological innovation. The invention of the tea bag, accidentally discovered by American tea merchant Thomas Sullivan in 1908, when he sent samples in small silk bags that customers began steeping directly, revolutionized tea preparation. Though initially scorned by purists, tea bags made tea convenient and accessible, particularly suited to the fast pace of modern life. By the end of the century, tea bags accounted for the vast majority of tea sales in Western markets. The development of iced tea represents another significant innovation in tea culture. First popularized at the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, iced tea became a staple beverage in the American South, where the hot climate made cold beverages particularly appealing. Sweet tea, heavily sugared and served over ice, became so integral to Southern culture that it's often simply called tea, with unsweetened tea requiring specification. This adaptation shows how tea continues to evolve to meet local tastes and conditions. The rise of bubble tea, or boba, in Taiwan in the 1980s represents one of the most recent major innovations in tea culture. Combining tea with milk, sugar, and chewy tapioca pearls, bubble tea created an entirely new tea experience that has spread globally, particularly among younger consumers. This playful, customizable approach to tea has spawned countless variations and a thriving international industry, showing that tea culture continues to evolve and attract new generations. Let us now consider the profound impact of tea on global commerce and economy. Tea is the world's second most consumed beverage after water, with over 3 billion cups drunk every day. The tea industry employs millions of people worldwide, from farmers and pickers to processors, traders, and retailers. In countries like Kenya, Sri Lanka, and India, tea exports represent significant portions of national income and foreign exchange earnings. The modern tea trade has become increasingly complex, with sophisticated supply chains connecting producers in Asia and Africa with consumers worldwide. Climate change poses new challenges to tea cultivation, as changing rainfall patterns and rising temperatures affect traditional growing regions. Some areas that have grown tea for centuries are becoming less suitable, while new regions are emerging as potential tea producers. Tea farmers are adapting through selective breeding of more resilient varieties and implementing sustainable farming practices. The specialty tea movement, paralleling similar developments in coffee and wine, has created new markets for high-quality, single-origin teas. Consumers increasingly seek teas with distinctive flavors and stories, willing to pay premium prices for exceptional quality and ethical production. This has created opportunities for small-scale producers to reach international markets directly, bypassing traditional commodity chains. Tea tourism has emerged as travelers seek to visit famous tea regions, participating in picking and processing to understand their favorite beverages' origins. The health properties of tea, long recognized in traditional medicine, have been increasingly validated by modern science. Research has shown that tea contains numerous beneficial compounds, including polyphenol with antioxidant properties, L-theanine, which promotes relaxation and focus, and moderate amounts of caffeine that provide gentle stimulation. Different types of tea offer various health benefits. Green tea is rich in catechins that may help prevent certain cancers and cardiovascular disease. Black tea contains theaflavins that might help reduce cholesterol. White tea has the highest antioxidant levels. Oolong tea may aid in weight management, and pu'er tea could help with digestion and metabolism. These health discoveries have influenced tea consumption patterns, with many people choosing specific teas for their perceived health benefits. The wellness industry has embraced tea, incorporating it into various health and beauty products. Matcha, in particular, has experienced a renaissance, moving beyond traditional tea ceremony use to become a popular ingredient in lattes, smoothies, and even skincare products. This represents both an evolution and, some might argue, a departure from traditional tea culture. As we contemplate the cultural significance of tea, we see how it serves as a bridge between peoples and traditions. Tea ceremonies and rituals, whether the Japanese shinoyu, the Chinese gongfu cha, or the British afternoon tea, create structured spaces for social interaction and cultural transmission. These rituals teach patience, mindfulness, and respect for tradition, while also allowing for personal expression and creativity within established frameworks. Tea houses and cafes continue to serve as important social spaces where people gather to converse, work, or simply exist in companionable silence. From the traditional chaikhanas of Central Asia to the modern bubble tea shops of Los Angeles, these establishments provide what sociologist Ray Oldenburg called third places, neither home nor work, where community life unfolds. In an increasingly digital world, the physical act of sharing tea creates moments of genuine human connection. The language of tea has enriched many cultures. English is full of tea-related expressions, not my cup of tea, tempest in a teapot, spill the tea. Chinese has numerous tea-related proverbs and sayings that reflect philosophical concepts. Japanese tea vocabulary includes precise terms for different aspects of the tea ceremony that have no direct translations in other languages. This linguistic richness shows how deeply tea has penetrated cultural consciousness. Tea has also played a significant role in literature and arts. From Liu Yu's classic 8th century treatise to Okakura Kakuzo's Book of Tea, published in 1906, writers have used tea as a lens to examine culture, philosophy, and human nature. Poets from Li Bai to William Cowper have celebrated tea in verse. Artists have depicted tea ceremonies and tea gardens, finding in them subjects worthy of aesthetic contemplation. The famous willow pattern, found on countless blue and white tea services, tells a romantic story that has become part of global cultural heritage. In the realm of diplomacy and international relations, tea has often served as a medium for communication and negotiation. Tea diplomacy has facilitated discussions between nations, with shared tea ceremonies creating neutral ground for dialogue. The gift of fine tea has long been a diplomatic gesture, acknowledging respect and fostering goodwill. Even today, state visits often include tea ceremonies that honor both host and guest traditions. As we look at contemporary tea culture, we see both continuity and change. Traditional tea ceremonies continue to be practiced and taught, preserving ancient knowledge and techniques. In Japan, schools of tea ceremony train new generations of tea masters, adapting ancient practices to modern life. In China, the revival of traditional culture has sparked renewed interest in classical tea preparation methods. Young people who might have dismissed tea as old-fashioned are discovering the depth and sophistication of their tea heritage. Simultaneously, tea culture continues to evolve and innovate. Molecular gastronomy has been applied to tea, creating new textures and presentations. Tea cocktails combine traditional tea with modern mixology. Cold brew tea offers a smooth, less astringent alternative to traditional hot brewing. Kombucha, a fermented tea beverage, has become a billion-dollar industry, valued for its probiotic properties and unique flavors. These innovations show that tea culture remains vibrant and responsive to contemporary tastes and lifestyles. The sustainability challenges facing the tea industry reflect broader environmental concerns. Conventional tea cultivation often involves significant pesticide use, deforestation, and soil degradation. Climate change threatens traditional tea-growing regions with unpredictable weather patterns, droughts, and new pest pressures. In response, many producers are adopting organic and biodynamic farming methods, implementing water conservation strategies, and working to preserve biodiversity in tea gardens. Fair trade and ethical sourcing have become important considerations for many tea consumers. The working conditions of tea pickers, often women in developing countries, have come under scrutiny. Certification programs attempt to ensure fair wages and working conditions, though challenges remain in verification and implementation. Direct trade relationships between producers and buyers offer another model, potentially providing better returns to farmers while ensuring quality for consumers. The role of technology in modern tea culture presents interesting contrasts. While some aspects of tea production have been mechanized, the highest quality teas still require hand-picking and careful processing that no machine can replicate. Online platforms have made rare teas accessible globally, connecting small producers with international markets. Apps teach brewing techniques and timer functions ensure perfect steeping. Yet the essence of tea culture, the mindful pause it creates in daily life, remains fundamentally analog and human. As we consider tea's future, several trends emerge. The premiumization of tea continues, with consumers willing to pay more for quality and authenticity. Climate adaptation will reshape where and how tea is grown. New processing techniques may create novel tea types, as happened with GABA tea in Japan, developed to enhance gamma-aminobutyric acid content for its calming effects. Younger generations are reimagining tea culture, creating new rituals and meanings while sometimes rediscovering traditional practices. The globalization of tea culture has created fascinating hybrid traditions. American coffee shops serve matcha lattes alongside espresso drinks. British tea rooms in Tokyo serve afternoon tea with Japanese influences. Chinese tea houses in Paris adapt traditional service to French sensibilities. These cross-cultural exchanges enrich global tea culture, creating creating new possibilities while sometimes raising questions about authenticity and cultural appropriation. Education about tea is expanding, with sommelier-style tea education programs training professionals to understand tea at a deep level. Universities offer courses on tea history and culture. Online communities share knowledge about tea cultivation, processing, and preparation. This democratization of tea knowledge empowers consumers to make informed choices and appreciate tea's complexity. The mindfulness movement has embraced tea as a practice for presence and awareness. The simple act of preparing and drinking tea becomes a form of meditation, a way to slow down and center oneself. This isn't new, of course. Buddhist monks discovered tea's contemplative potential over a millennium ago. But in our accelerated age, tea's invitation to pause resonates with particular power. Tea continues to adapt to local cultures worldwide. In Kenya, tea is typically served strong and sweet with milk. In Tibet, butter tea remains essential for high-altitude life. In Argentina, though technically not from Camellia sinensis, mate serves a similar social function to tea elsewhere. Each culture makes tea its own while participating in a global tradition. The artistic presentation of tea continues to evolve. Modern teaware combines traditional forms with contemporary design. Glass teapots allow the visual appreciation of tea leaves unfurling. Temperature-controlled kettles achieve precise brewing temperatures. Yet amid all this innovation, a simple cup of tea, prepared with care and attention, remains profoundly satisfying. As we reflect on tea's journey through history, we see how this simple beverage has shaped and been shaped by human culture. From ancient Chinese mountains to modern metropolises, tea has been a constant companion to humanity, offering comfort, stimulation, and connection. It has sparked wars and facilitated peace, divided classes and united communities, preserved traditions, and inspired innovations. The story of tea is far from over. As we face global challenges of sustainability, health, and social connection, tea offers lessons and possibilities. Its cultivation can model sustainable agriculture. Its preparation teaches patience and mindfulness. Its sharing creates community. In a world that often feels fragmented and accelerated, tea provides continuity with the past and presence in the moment. Consider the journey of a single tea leaf, from the moment it unfurls on a bush in a misty mountain garden to the instant it releases its essence in hot water thousands of miles away. That leaf carries within it the DNA of ancient plants, the knowledge of generations of tea makers, the labor of pickers and processors, the judgment of tasters and traders, and finally, the intention of the person preparing the tea. Each cup connects us to this vast web of relationships spanning time and space. The transformation of water through tea is a kind of alchemy, turning the simplest of liquids into something that can warm, energize, calm, or inspire. This,